Shalom and welcome to Live Light Well and Into All Truth. Today I'm going to cook 3 wonderful healthy vegetarian meals for you. Actually, the sandwich portion doesn't require cooking, but these are just ideas for people who are doing more of a vegetable type fast if you're a meat eater. And these aren't in my recipe book. These are all versions of other recipes like roasted vegetables, sandwich snacks, and my Yao made soup that I have in my recipe book. So these are adaptations on those. But I just came up with them this week because I'm cooking for other people right now. And so these are just some ideas that I came up with, but one of them is very simple. If you're just doing a pure vegetable fast without any starches or anything like that. And then I have a nice soup with wild rice, as well as a sandwich on kamut or rye bread, which are alkaline original grains. And so let's get started. So you will need 2 to 3 teaspoons of extra virgin cold pressed olive oil, half a bunch of fresh basil leaves. I got these out of my deck garden, and you slice them up. You'll also be using fresh thyme, about 3 sprigs of it, as well as a sprig of fresh rosemary, a small to medium butternut squash, a very large zucchini. I actually got a zucchini from a friend's garden, which was just as wide as the squash. 3 to 4 tomatoes, some red peppers, either one big large one or 2 of these smaller kinds of ones that grow out here in BC. I got these at the farmer's market. They're just absolutely beautiful. And about half of a purple onion, medium purple onion. Slice the zucchini into medallions, as well as the squash. You'll have to peel off the skin of the squash and obviously dig out the seeds. Add oil to the baking sheet. I use 2 giant Dutch iron pans. So this one's the lid and one's the actual cooking pot. And then I just rub the medallions top and bottom around in the oil in the bottom of the pan and flip them. Then I just add rustically chunked red peppers. And what I also do is I will do a rustic chunking up or cutting up of the tomatoes as well, just so that they're nice and hearty and they maintain their flavor. And so you just disperse them evenly throughout the pan so that they can get a good exposure to the grill. Isn't it beautiful and colorful? It's always so appealing cooking with natural foods. And then you dice up the purple onion, slice it crosswise, just mince it, and it should look about like this. And then you just pick it up and generously sprinkle it over top of all of the vegetables. I do this, I sprinkle it on last because I want when I grill the vegetables, I want the grill to sort of caramelize the onions when they're on top. So that's why I put them on top. I used to do big, huge, rustic chunks of onions, and those can be really nice because they can caramel nicely, but this generally cooks pretty quickly and it can take some time to caramelize larger pieces of onions. So I tend to do the small ones, and it really, the minced onions, and then it really flavors the vegetables quickly. I don't use any garlic because it's not SEAWEED recommended. And then I slice up my basil, or basil, whichever way you wish to call it. Just beautiful bright green color that it has. It's just always a pleasure to look at all these colors while you're cooking. And so you just evenly distribute them on top. And see, we've got all these beautiful colors going. And what I tend to do is with the thyme and the rosemary, I just kind of tuck them in the side and under the vegetables, just so that they retain some of their moisture and they kind of cook into the sauce that the baking and steaming of the vegetables creates at the bottom. And then of course you sprinkle on your half teaspoon of sea salt. You may want to sprinkle some more oil on top, and then I grill on high for about 20 minutes and you get this beautiful colorful fire roasted effect. Even though there's no fire, it's just a broiler, but it still ends up just looking beautiful. And you see there's a lovely kind of a sauce coming from these gigantic zucchini that I got from my friend's garden. Here it is, squash and zucchini medallions with fire roasted red peppers and tomatoes, and I just put a dollop of pesto sauce on top for extra added richness. And the pesto is in my recipe book. Pesto with kale in it. So here it is. You can see the fire roasted everything. I really roasted it for far away from the broiling grill in the oven for like 20 minutes. So you have to keep it at a distance. And you should check on it because, you know, not all heat is accurate. So everything is kind of fire roasted. And really simple. It's just cutting up the vegetables, sticking them in the oven with oil and salt and pepper and throwing on the herbs. And so let's taste it. I'm at my halfway point through the day, intermittent fasting. So I'm going to make sure I get a bit of pesto on it and red pepper. Oh my gosh. The pesto makes it so savory, and then the butternut squash, and then the fire roasted tomatoes and onions and peppers, like just that slightly burnt flavor, just makes it. It's really heavy and savory, especially with a bit of rosemary in there or thyme. Wow, really sumptuous and tasty. It's like fruit. It's like a veggie steak medley. This is for people who are, you know, not actually doing a pure fast. This is not in my recipe book. I just made it up as I was doing my intermittent fasting. So pesto is in my recipe book. So as I said, you can also have eggplant medallions. So I added some eggplant medallions. I just roasted some eggplant with pesto with the same method for about 15 minutes, so that now you can have a 3-layer squash medallion steaks with roasted red peppers and tomatoes as an option. And, you know, if it starts getting a little, you know, if you keep it overnight or something, you can just mash it all together and you have like a ratatouille. Add more tomatoes. It's really, it can be repurposed after you eat it fresh and leave it overnight kind of thing. So mash it up to make a baba ganoush. It's just good to have roasted vegetables to put on top of salads, to add to soups, put on pizzas, just a good basic staple. And it's very simple, very easy to make. It's just a matter of slicing these things up, sticking them in an oiled pan, pouring some oil on top, and dicing up the onions and putting them on top, and then just grilling them on a barbecue or just broiling them under the broiler for about 20 minutes. But try to keep it a bit far away so it doesn't blacken. Just look at the rich, rich colors. That's how you can tell healthy food is you have this, the full spectrum of colors. You have green, orange, red, purple, lots of vitamins, phytonutrients. And this is a great savory dish for people who are thinking that eating vegetarian is not savory and satisfying. Especially in this case, I put pesto with the eggplant and added it to the rest of the dish, and so that nutty flavor kind of really grounds it and makes it savory because there's oil in the nuts. And so here's the basic dish without it. And then, as I said before, the next day, it's still really good the next day if you just heat it up, but it also makes a great base for soups a couple of days later, or it's just a way to start off a soup, which is what I'm going to use it for, to make this version of ya-made soup, which is in my recipe book. Wild rice, savory chickpea vegetable stew. And I just make this usually something like this with leftovers. These are some onions that I got from my friend's garden as well. Same with the thyme again, Roma tomatoes. Here is some of the roasted vegetables, yellow beans from my friend's garden. And there's some leftover callaloo and kale I had in the fridge. Fresh cayenne, ginger, and thyme that we're going to put into this soup. And you can see some bay leaves as well there on the side. And we're also going to use 2 sheets of ground nori and some dulse. And you start by sauteing the onions, and when they're caramelized, you add ginger, onions, and cayenne. And then you can add the nori, dulse. I had a few kind of leftover tomatoes here and there. And then your bay leaves. It's kind of brown from the seaweed. And then you can toss in your thyme. That's my thyme that I'm tossing in. And then after you add your thyme, you can, once it's simmering a little bit, you can add your chickpeas with their water. The chickpea water is called AQUAFAVA. That's chickpea water, it's AQUAFAVA. And that just gives the soup more, a wonderful consistency. So you add probably about a cup of chickpeas I put here. I don't really measure. You can see the light is changing here with the overhead light. And then I added my roasted vegetables, and there is no sin in putting roasted vegetables in here because they add that wonderful savory flavor to the dish. And this is a dish you can quickly assemble, again, like I said, from leftovers. And so then I boil 2 cups of spring water or reverse osmosis water. And you just bring to a boil and then allow it to simmer. I never use tap water when I cook, unless I'm washing things, and then I always put H2O2 in it. So you see it's at a wonderful simmer. And then what I do is I'm adding my wild rice. Now this is both wild rice and basmati rice, and I don't know if I said it at the beginning, but when I make it, I will cook the wild rice first, and then I will add in the basmati rice later because it cooks a lot more slowly. So you have to kind of do it in 2 parts, but that's how I made it. And so I've added maybe about half a cup to 2/3 of it because rice tends to expand in a dish like this, but it also makes it really nice and hearty. And then I mince up these garden green onions and toss them in the top just for more flavor. And also it adds some brightness to the dish. And once again, I just mix it up a little bit, and then I will cover it and allow it to simmer once again. And you have to be careful, try not to mix it too furiously. You're just really turning the vegetables and stuff over because you don't want the rice to break up, and you don't want any of these wonderful rustic vegetables to break up either. You kind of want them whole. It gives it that chunky, stewy kind of effect. So then I will just cover this, like I said, and allow it to simmer. And I also had some leftover kale and callaloo seasoned kale and callaloo. So I just added that in as well. Again, like I said, this is a kind of leftovers dish. Whatever you have in the fridge, of course it's not spoiled or going bad, you simply add that to this stew. This is like stone soup. And so once it's simmered for 5 to 7 minutes, you see even the rice is puffed up a bit, and it is very heavy and stewy, and you see the wonderful hearty vegetables are still in nice big chunks. And this is what is going to, and see how messy I am. This is just me. This is just how I am. But all these twigs, all of these sprigs of rosemary and thyme and everything like that, you know, when you're ladling out the soup, it gets a little difficult. Some people don't like it in their soup. I like to pull it out because I like to know that there's some fresh thyme and herbs and stuff in there. And that's what they tend to do in the West Indies. They always have the fresh sprig of fresh thyme. So it's something that's kind of a homey thing that I like, and it's very typical of rustic dishes like this. So you see, it smells absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Let's see how this tastes. Wow. It tastes like a savory chicken broth. It tastes like chicken soup. Especially with all of the thyme. I would also recommend putting sage in it too, which would make it really savory too. And even savory too, adding savory. All those kind of chicken spices. It's really good though, wow. It's like hot chicken soup. It's like the soups they make in Jamaica, you know, with the squash and everything. Really, really good. Really simple. You know, you just throw some leftover stuff in there and you're good to go. Using the nori, ground up nori sheets. Don't buy a powder, because I saw powder once and it just tasted terrible. So I use it as fertilizer for my plants. But get the sheets and grind them up in a coffee grinder. You know, the seaweed really helps with that minerally umami flavor. It also helps with your joints and bones and everything. And then the roasted vegetables, lots of onions and stuff like that. That all makes it really savory. And you can add just a bit of the coconut aminos substitute if you want a bit more savory flavor, but I really don't think it's necessary, you know, or you can add it to the soup just if you're finding it just isn't having that umami flavor that you're looking for, that really savory kind of yummy flavor, but it is so good. And just the mixture of textures, flavors, and again, you just add all of these broths. The broths that are in my recipe book are basically the broth that I made here, okay, for this soup. So if you get the book, and please, at some point, you guys, I'm going to switch over. If anyone has any suggestions on a medium that I can post the book and the calendar on, I'd really appreciate it. Can't do everything myself, although I do try. So there's several broths in my recipe book, but this is basically one of the broths that I have as a recipe in my recipe book. So it's like a seaweed broth. Okay? Very simple to make, and it'll taste just like chicken soup or even beef broth if you add particular things. Like in one of my recipes, I add tamarind and I add a bit of tomato paste, and it starts to taste like beef broth even, just depending on what you put in, or allspice. If you add allspice, tamarind, tomato, it just starts tasting like beef. So, but this one tastes more like chicken broth. So it's all about the flavors. It's all about just adding things and improvising as well, okay? Because we know that We know how to cook. Those of us who know how to cook, we know how to improvise and cook. You don't have to have perfect food on site, but if you just add to the broth, it's fantastic, and it just makes for a really good, satisfying meal that everyone should love. So last we have our smoky kale and arugula sandwich with hummus and either nut cheese or manchego sheep cheese. And this is another super healthy dish. It also has avocado in it. So start by lightly toasting your rye or spelt bread. And you slice or butter on the avocado and hummus. And I will sprinkle on some cayenne pepper. And then add slices of the nut cheese or manchego cheese, that's sheep cheese, which is very healthy. And then I add what's called this wild brine, smoky kale and sauerkraut. Really good for the digestion, good for the gut bacteria. And so then I just add some simple sliced tomatoes and then sprinkle on your wonderful spicy arugula. You know, arugula has that kind of peppery, spicy flavor. And all of these things are just, you know, things that I buy at the store when I just don't have time to cook. But I make sure I get, you know, the organic hummus, and wild brine is also organic. And then you just close it up. You put your sandwich together. This goes really well with the soup. But either one of them is a meal unto itself. Like I find that, especially with these breads, we're using spelt or rye bread, both which are alkaline breads, and they're both original foods. I can just eat 2 of these small sandwiches and I'm very satisfied. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy these foods. Let me know if you try them out as you're on your fast or attempting to switch over to a vegetable-only diet, or you can even pair them with any meat or fish that you are eating if you are still eating those foods. But again, I recommend that you eat only wild caught salmon or farm-raised organic meats if you know your farmer. All right, thanks so much again for watching. Chaya or Chaya, eat well, eat life. Once again, you can get Chaya, Eat Life and Fast at livelightwell.com for a donation of $7, and you must download it from Dropbox. If you get it, always check your junk mail for the Dropbox link. You have to join Dropbox and download it, and you can get Moed 2019 Into All Truth calendar and convocations for a donation of $7. Also, thank you so much for watching. May God bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine on you. Be gracious, lift the light of his countenance, and give you shalom.